thumbs up if you can hear us. Can you hear me? Happy days, happy days. There's a few of you there. You haven't got your cameras on, that's okay. You're all very welcome and lovely to be here. Delighted to be here for the first ever Coffee with Colin Live, young Tim Kelly. Very first ever Coffee Colin Live featuring none other than Mr. Alan Andrews. So just a couple of the ground rules. It is a live piece. We're going to try and keep it to 20 minutes for a chat with Alan and then a Q&A. If you've got a question, you might pop it in the chat box, and when we get to it, we might then, if people want to unmute you, you can ask the question live, but pop it in the chat box anyway, please, in the meantime. Because you're all muted, I did a TEDx recently where there was a deaf speaker speaking, and so she taught us all how to applaud. So you might all give the deaf community wave there by way of applauding that you're all here. And when Alan says something outstanding, let's give it loads of that, if that's okay. And so I'm going to introduce you to Alan. Alan Andrews is a friend of mine, and let me see what he wrote about himself. I think it's fascinating. Just 1 second here till I find it. This is a live show, of course. Had it open a moment ago, can't find it now, the usual. Here we go. But I'll introduce you to my guest, Alan, my first guest. Alan and I go way back, by the way, so we're good buddies. Alan Andrews, his business name is the Old Barracks Coffee Roastery. What does your business do? It does coffee roasting. Surprise, surprise. In business for 2 years, 14 employees in those 2 years. And then he says, over the past 10 years, Alan Andrews has had tremendous success in the coffee industry, established Ireland's first coffee education business, 2009, and in 2018 he reinvented, most important word of coronavirus, he reinvented. And I'm going to let Alan take over from there. The other thing I want to ask you to do, folks, is to put your social media contact links into the chat box so we can all stay in touch with each other. Alan, my friend, welcome to Coffee with Colin. Do you have a branded Old Barracks coffee cup there? Happy days. There you go. Lovely. Alan Andrews. Who is Alan Andrews?
Who am I?
Please.
Oh, listen, I'm just like everybody else here, trying to survive, try and move on. I came into coffee 2009, having released myself from my interest in Delish cafes, which we set up in 2004 in Limerick, which is where I met Colin. I think, you know, this is just a journey. Everything's just a journey. It's amazing how things just roll into each other. We've come full circle. I opened cafes 2004. We had 3 or 4 cafes in a small chain in Delish. I surrendered my interest in that in 2009. Coincidentally, I wasn't actually working in Delish at the time. I was working for a furniture company, and I had an interest in the cafes, so I still owned them. And I got made redundant because of the recession. So that was the end of 2008, start of 2009. I thought I had arranged a transition to another company that looked like they were also setting up, and I managed to lose one job and pick up another one within a week of another. So I thought it was great, only to end up getting made redundant from that job 4 weeks later because they went into liquidation. So from 2009 onwards, I set up Coffee Culture, which was the first business in the country to deliver training and education. So that was really my start in coffee, like a real serious start into coffee. And now, you know, we're in the middle of this mess, which is trying to figure out what do we do next and where do we go from here on. And getting, you know, we've 14 staff here. We run 2 properties. We have a wholesale business which is now decimated, really. So it's gone. You know, I think we might sell 10 kilos of coffee this week wholesale. Other than that, the wholesale business is decimated. We have a retail offering here at the Roastery, which looks like that might generate some income. We need to generate at least 3,000 a week just to keep 5 or 6 people in employment and give them more than the government is going to give them, 205 euros a week. That's assuming I don't take any money for myself, which is okay for the moment, but I don't know how long I can survive that. and if we don't pay back any bills.
Yeah, if I may, it sounds a little bleak at the minute, but we get to that in just a few minutes, Alan, if you don't mind. So for now, I think I'd like you just to tell us about, you've been reinventing over the last number of years. I was with you through that journey of the delish change, coffee culture starting. Tell us about the Old Barracks Coffee Roastery and what you managed to create in the last 2 years. And then we get to what's happening now, and then we get to why you're being hopeful for the future.
Okay, so the Old Barracks was basically, I started off in 2009 teaching coffee education and trying to sell coffee to customers. That got to a stage where we were able to win customers around the country that they would sell our wholesale coffee. So that was great. And got to a stage where I couldn't really guarantee the product that I was selling in terms of its quality, because we were outsourcing the product. I wasn't big enough. So I made the decision, I think it was 2017, I made the decision in 2015 to rent this building that used to be owned by Browsers. And that was purely by luck, I guess, by chance. Found the building and asked them would they rent it to us because they were closing. So I was very lucky to get the building in 2015. And
the building is where, Alan, for those that don't know?
So it's an old, it's a 300-year-old stone building in the middle of Birdhill Village. And it was Browsers, it was Tipperary Crystal, and it is located beside Matthew Thrasher's here in the village. So there are 3 buildings in the village. There's us, there's Matthew Thrasher's next door, and a pub across the road. And the other 2 are closed at the moment, and most likely for the next 30 days. So I got this building and I wanted to do something with it, maybe just use it as an office and a wholesale business. That was my initial intention. And as the business progressed, or we got more involved in it, it seemed that there was possibly a retail element that we could produce, and there was possibly more to do here other than just selling coffee wholesale. So that's where we are. That's where we started was wholesale. We added on a retail element, which I never thought would be as busy as it is currently. I genuinely thought that if I had an opportunity for one person to work here a day selling coffee to, some kind of passerby, or maybe somebody who's looking to open a coffee shop and wants to buy our coffee wholesale, if I had the opportunity to sell them a coffee, well, then that might be all we would have. Turns out that on weekends now, Saturdays and Sundays, we need 7 people to run the coffee bar, because we have, between, 200 to 400 people visiting on a Saturday or Sunday. So we've completely moved with the offering, and we've listened to customer demands, I guess, and we've kind of created an offering to suit that. Yeah.
Fascinating. And so that brings us up to where we are today. So you started off with an idea, you were reinventing, watching what was happening with your marketplace. You took the brave decision to start roasting your own coffee because you weren't confident of the quality that from the outsourced partner. And I'm sure that's no disrespect intended to the outsourced partner, but at least you're now in control of what you do. And as a result of that move, it led you to, well, I've got this space, I'm roasting coffee, why wouldn't I open a coffee bar? So it's all this sort of sequential moves that you've made over time.
Yeah.
And now you find yourself right up to COVID-19, you find yourself basically swamped, which is, what a wonderful problem to have. For those that haven't been there, you need to go and check out the Old Barracks Coffee Roastery in Birdhill. It's an astounding achievement by Alan and his crew. Beautiful location, coffee is superb, etc. All the good stuff. Yeah. Lots of this. Let's all wave. Let's all clap for Alan. But no, really top class. So all of a sudden, then this thing hits right out of the blue. Nobody saw it coming, or we all ignored the signs or whatever. And we find ourselves now. We find ourselves where all of a sudden business is falling off a cliff. And my business fell off a cliff years ago. Your first, the Beauty's Cafe franchise years ago, your first business fell off a cliff, or the relationship changed many years ago. So you've been reinventing ever since. And all of a sudden now you've been forced into another reinvention. So how are you feeling about that?
Well, I think right now all we can do is take it day by day. There's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of narrative around opening, closing, trading, not trading, keeping people in jobs. I think no matter what happens, we're going to take a hit. It's trying to mitigate against that and trying to take as little of a hit. Like at the end of the day, if I can make any money over the next 10 to 12 weeks or 16 weeks, for every €100 I make now, it's €100 I don't have to borrow in 16 weeks to get reignited.
Sure.
And that's really the way I'm looking at it. We have some money. I don't know how long it's going to last. I'll probably have a better idea of that tomorrow. And we have some opportunities actually. And I'm strongly considering activating them. We pretty much built a street food garden concept. So that to me looks like a fairly safe, I suppose, offering where we can pre-order through an app, which we were developing. So we were developing an app for our coffee bar in Nina to look at the market there, because I thought that was more of a retail on-street, high street offering. And we were in the middle of developing an app for that, for ordering coffee and drinks to go. And now we've asked the guys to white label that and turn it into a food app that you can pre-order and pay for the kiosk outside. I have another container out there that we turned into a bar on Thursday, and I might open that as well. And we have a big garden, so we can completely make an offering and feed people both food and provide coffee without creating a space for people to gather in.
Great.
So I'm strongly considering doing that. I have a meeting now with the team. Some of the guys are here at the moment. I'm meeting now with the team, and we're going to have a look. So our day one, so it's day by day right now, week by week, or maybe like 3 days at a time. That's the immediate action, and then I think we have some medium and long-term plans as well, which I can tell you about.
Yeah, thanks for that, Al. It's really interesting, and at one level, I suppose we could all get sucked down into fear, right? But based on my experience of losing our first business for very different reasons, this is a very different issue. This is a global pandemic. Everybody that we're speaking to online here today, everybody in the world is affected by it. And therefore, I am fully expecting, I'm less nervous now as I was before. Number one, it's not my first time to hit a challenge. And number two, everybody's affected. So I'm expecting that everybody will be a little more accommodating, whether that's banks and revenue. By the way, I assume you're fully aware, as our viewers, that there's a government initiative to support all employees and or self-employed with a €203 per week, should we choose to avail of it. So that's, I think, an important message to get out there. We all need to, step up, and we've been paying into these institutions, banks and revenue for it's now time perhaps to get some back and not be afraid of that. So I suppose the question is, what's going to happen? You said something earlier which I found interesting. You said every €100 I can make now is €100 less I'll have to borrow in 16 weeks. Two things came to me for that. One is, you mentioned 16 weeks, which is scaring the japers out of me, right? But I think you're right. I think this is a long-term play. We saw Taoiseach last night going on and saying it's not going to be over on the 29th of March. So Karen Bola, our school lunch business, is out perhaps until September at this stage. We don't know. The second thing you said about the €100 is, if I may be so bold as to say, that's only if you make €100 profit. Bringing €100 in through the till to pay for the coffee and the electricity and the staffing and all the stuff, the rest isn't good enough. And at some point there's a number there below which you're better off just closing and taking the hit. Have you a view on that?
I do have a view on that, yeah. And actually, I don't think I don't see closing as an option in the long term. So I'm playing the long-term game here. And what I've explained to the staff is that I think we're in a pre-opening position. So if I knew now what I knew 3 years ago, I would be very bullish about what we can achieve. But I had low expectations 3 years ago, but high standards, I suppose you could say. So now we're preparing to open a new business, and I don't have full-time work for everybody, but we do have a super well-oiled machine. I know what the potential of our business is in terms of just looking at coffee to go, street food, opening an artisan food store, wholesale business. So I know how to run that machine, and I know that we have whittled out, let's say, the staff to give me a really strong team that I have in place. And it took me nearly 2 years to put a team in place so to run the business the way I need to run the business. So now I'm actually in a super space. I'm in a super position. I think that where we are now is we're pre-opening. We have a load of jobs to do, like rebranding, putting stuff online, painting the building, cleaning floors, and it's all the stuff that we have to do for a pre-opening. And that pre-opening is going to happen in 8 weeks or 16 weeks. And it's about funding that so that when we're ready to go, we're ready to go. And we go all in. But I'm going to be a much more efficient operation when we reopen, because I won't have to train everybody. We won't have to figure out how to roast different coffees. Before we opened 2 years ago, I spent €10,000 on buying in green coffee, all of the premium high-end stuff that we sell now, but I hadn't a clue how to cook it and roast it. And we burned coffee, we lost money. So now I'm buoyant and I'm upbeat, because I think every business is looking at this as doom and gloom, we're going to close. I'm going, forget that. We're pre-opening phase here. We're planning. We're getting ready to open again, because we will open again. We'll open again in 4 months. It might cost me 30 grand. It might cost me 50 grand. But we can turn over $1 million. We can turn over more than $1 million a year. So if I can turn over that, 50 grand, 100 grand is nothing in the scheme of things, compared to where we're going to go. And that's like, this was always a plan. What have I got on my wall? Let me see if I can spin around here. So this is I don't think you can see that, but I'll be 50 in 2025, right? So I have 5 years here. And we've always been going for this 2025 vision of that.
And he's single, ladies, and he's single.
So I'll be 50 in 2025. I was always taking the long-term approach. If it's 50 grand that I need to borrow to reestablish or to cover the debt, it's 50 grand and we'll take it on the chin. But I'm completely viewing this now. I've done a complete tailspin on it. I'm not being pessimistic. We're in pre-opening, and I know that if we open, we'll turn over more when we open than I did the first couple of months 2 years ago. So,
which is fantastic. What a wonderful attitude, Alan. And what I love about Alan's approach to life is he's got a great ideas, and then he acts upon them. And he's a calculated risk taker. He's not a risk taker per se. He's not a gambler. But he's a calculated risk taker, and he works everything out and says, no, seriously, he tries to figure out how well can this go. He starts with that, not how bad can this possibly be, how well can this go, and then he tempers it back from there. So hats off to you, Alan. So come here, it's been a bit of a journey. Excuse me, it's been a bit of a journey. You had to reinvent over the last decade. In the last 2 years, you've reinvented hugely again. So I thought it was really interesting what you said there was that you're now pre-opening. This isn't you closing down, you're pre-opening your next phase. Really, really interesting take. And you've got a fully trained personnel or crew there that can reopen at a moment's notice when the veil is lifted. And of course the veil will lift, whether it's 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 16 weeks or a year, the veil will lift again. And we get back to doing business, albeit differently. Happy days. Okay, Alan, I'm going to ask to see, does anybody want to ask a question? If you do, if you put your hand up, and I will unmute you for a moment. Put your hand up first. Okay, we've got Siobhan Fitzpatrick. Hey, Siobhan, give me just 2 seconds there, and I shall unmute you.
Hi, Colm, and thanks, Alan, for sharing your insights into what's happening now for you. And I don't know if you mentioned this earlier on, but did you go through a moment or a 24-hour of panic before you got your head straight into how can I turn this around into an opportunity or another way of looking at my business?
Yes. I mean, several.
Next question.
Yeah, like, so let me tease that out a little bit.
Yeah, how did you manage it, or what did you do to get your head straight again?
Yeah, I think we all worry about the emotional connections that we have with our businesses and with the people that we're involved in. So for some, it's grandparents or children or partners, and for employers, then it's also the families that, you know, the mortgages that you're paying through your businesses. We have 14 people employed here, so you have an emotional connection and a debt to encourage them to keep going, and that we'll fight through this. So and we have staff who will disagree with my position on how we're going to drive forward, and I have to fully accept that. I've you know, I know that's not everybody has my worldview on life, and that's okay with me. But I went through social media. I went through all the comments online. I went looking and I sought the opinion of our customers. I ran an Instagram poll on Sunday evening at 6 o'clock before I kind of decided that we would close in the short term, let's say. And over 500 people voted, maybe 600 people voted, and 85% of the customers who voted told me that we should stay open. And I then said that we should close because I was feeling the pressure from social media and from staff, and I actually fully expected that we would be told to close. And it was almost like having made a decision, I felt better for it. Just having made a decision. It didn't necessarily mean it was the right decision, but I just made a decision. Are we closing or opening? And then I knew exactly where I stood. So we closed, or we said we would close, and I closed we wound down on Monday. And for the last 7 days, Monday back, we've had our busiest week of the year. Wow. Which is a bit mad because I've had only 3 staff in the coffee bar, and we've taken more money with 3 staff than we would ever take with 7. Because it's coffee to go. So it's all very confusing, and there's no, thank you. It's all very confusing, and there's no right and there's no wrong. It's just, you know, make decisions. So yesterday morning I came down here to meet a mate for coffee at 10 o'clock, and I didn't stop making coffee all day. We weren't open, but people were swinging by going, can we get a coffee or not? And then that left me even more confused. So I don't think there's a right answer or a wrong answer. I don't think there's, I think there's been a lot of reaction, rightly so. And I think people need to be responsible for social distancing, for looking after themselves and for doing their own thing. At the end of the day, I don't really think I've slept really properly like in the last 2 weeks, because you know it's coming. You don't know what really you need to be worrying about. And for me, it's this feeling of I'm standing in a room of darkness, my eyes are closed, and I have no idea what's going to come at me. And I'm just standing there afraid, but not knowing what I'm afraid of. So I've nothing to be afraid of.
Thank you for being so honest and open there, because I think there's not one of us that are not feeling the same. And what I've experienced is the sense of community that's come out of this, and the want to support one another, knowing that we're all in the same boat. But if, you know, it's adding value or creating the value where we can with our fellow, you know, entrepreneurs or people, local businesses, it's really been outstanding from my experience so far.
Yeah, well said, Siobhan, and Alan. Very honest. That's what I was hoping we would get to in this with this initiative, that we get real people who are in real businesses with real struggles, who are being real, and so no better man to kick it off. One thing, if I may, Alan, I think is really interesting is, you know, you got to a point where you made a decision, and once you made the decision, you were at peace. Last Thursday, when I was in the office, and the Taoiseach came on from Washington and said he was shutting the schools from 6 o'clock Thursday evening. That was a decision made, like. And instantly the pressure went because nothing I could do was outside my control. So I do think there's power, folks, in us all taking our own power back. If government or somebody else isn't making a decision on your behalf, make your own decision. Stay or go, wind it down, ramp it up. Definitely, we all have to operate differently. No question, no question. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Interesting, Alan, your point that you took more money with 3 staff than you ever did with 7 because the model changed. And that wasn't something you would normally have tested, but it was forced upon you. So there's interesting times ahead. Siobhan, great question. Anybody else got a question? Oh, you're not shy. Come on. What's the story? I'm looking at some of you there. Definitely, I know you're not shy. Mr. Smith.
Colin, if I may, I think looking at I suppose the rhetoric on social media, certainly Twitter and other places, there is definitely like stages to how people will react, and there's the fear, and then there's the people that will, I think, react to that, and they might go on a low, or they might start to feel that there's no way out and this is not going to go anywhere, and then you also have then the people who will go like, to hell with this, let's try and make something happen. And I think that's like for me, that's my only reaction, because I've been in lower positions. So, I've had no jobs, no money, no car, no marriage, and really, so I really don't care anymore.
Yeah,
so it goes, yeah. Toshiba has.
Well, but I also think, Alan, if I may, there's you were talking about your eyes closed in a dark room, not knowing what was going to come at you, and there's a fear around that. But I also think that at a deep level, that you'll cope with whatever comes at you. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah.
Based on history.
Well, I think we all just get afraid. So I can't deal with that because I have no idea what I'm afraid of. So what I am in control of is what we do and what our staff do and what we can deliver. And if we can provide something, and if people want that and are willing to pay for it and support us, and all small businesses, well, then we will just drive on and keep doing that. And until that becomes untenable, well, then we'll shut, and then it'll cost more to get back open. But if, in the meantime, if I can keep, I don't care about paying back the loans. I really care about trying to keep people in work and give them more than €205 a week. So,
okay.
Yeah. Toshiba has a question there, if you saw that.
Toshiba, that's young. Young Toshiba himself.
Morning, Colin. Yeah, it's Eamon here, masquerading under my pseudonym, Toshiba. Colin, thank you so much for hosting. Alan, thanks a million for sharing your amazing story. I suppose, at what point did you find maybe you were, let's say, letting go of the fear, or maybe getting a bit of clarity over what you could control, what you couldn't control? Maybe you could say a few words around that. At what point when you were talking about you were in the dark room with eyes closed, at what point did you find that you're letting go of that and you're like, okay, come what may, I've got this? Do you know what I mean? What changed for you?
I think just well, yesterday was a big day for me because I came down to fix a sink more or less, and people just kept coming. So I thought that was very interesting, and I thought that, look, there's no, I'm still fearful, don't get me wrong, but it has dramatically reduced because I'm not worrying about what are the government going to do or not going to do. I'm not worried about, what other people are going to prevent me from doing or their narrative. I divorced, started 2009. I had no income. I gave my last €20,000 to Delish Cafes the previous September because they were tight on money. I didn't realize I was going to be made redundant. I went into January without a pay slip. I thought I was cute enough to swap and get a new job and transition without losing any money. That job fell through. That company went into liquidation. This was the start of the recession. I had to, separate from Lisa, who coincidentally is going to help and come work with me this weekend. So we still have a great relationship. But I had no income. I have 2 children. I had no money to pay my rent. borrowed my mom's Micra, and I had a mobile phone and a laptop. And I literally started Coffee Culture, which was a training and education business. So I don't think I could be any lower than that. I was living in Limerick. I had no real friends here, or close friends, because all my mates were in Dublin. And I had no support. I had no support to take my kids. I had no grandparents here that could take my kids and mind them for me when I had the kids. I had taken a 7-day on, 7-day off rota with Lisa. So when I look back at what I faced back in 2009, I couldn't be any lower than that, really. Couldn't be any, like, in terms of potential, ability. And I literally took out a piece of paper and I said, right, what do I need out of my life, and what can I do to make money? They're the two questions. It was a small A4 pad, and I just opened it like that, and on this side I wrote, how do I make money, and what do I need? I need flexibility. I need no employer. I need to be able to take my kids 7 days a week, and these are the things that I can do. I'm good at training, consulting. I like coffee. I like the 9-to-5 cafe business. Fast forward now, and I own, I have 2 properties. We've got 12 staff. I own a coffee roaster. I own a food truck. We're renting this building on a long-term lease. So, Jesus, I have a huge start ahead of where I was 10 years ago. So that's why I'm not as fearful, but I'm still fearful.
Great answer. Thank you for that, Eamon, and thank you for your question. Folks, it's just
sure,
after,
thank you.
And I promised we'd get finished around now. Does anybody have a question before we would shut up shop for today?
I want to do a shout out to my dad. I see he's just joined the conversation. Hi, Seamus.
Hey, Seamus.
Seeing though I can't go visit him, I'll have to give him an L wave. I don't know if he can even hear me. Hi, Dad.
It's all the way to Seamus Andrews.
Yeah. And my mom, I think my mom is in the picture there somewhere as well.
Good stuff. Good.
Yeah.
So, folks, I want to first of all thank you all for coming on. This is an experiment, a social experiment, and today is the first day of the New World Order. I would like to thank Alan Andrews, my very dear friend Alan Andrews, who's one of the bravest men I know, by the way.
Crazy. One of the other favorite crazy.
For years I used to slag him, but he's just a great guy. And he's, as I said to you earlier, he takes risks, but they're always calculated risks. Great ideas, great action guy, and you need to go visit him and check out the links that he leave in the chat there. I've left my personal contacts there as well if anybody wants to hit me up on privately through Insta and everything. But I really think, the message here is we're in a pre-opening phase. That's where we're at. It's pre-opening. We're 2 months before we open a street food garden, an artisan wine shop, a coffee roastery, and that's where we're at. We're 2 months out, and we're just going to put the money in and get open, and it's going to be awesome when it does. Well, I agree with that. It will be awesome when it gets done, and it will get done, whether it's 1 month, 2 months, or sometime later. Happy days. So I'm going to introduce just 2 people before we go, but let's give Alan a quick round of applause there. Alan, well done. Happy days. Congratulations. Just wonderful. Thanks for being on. Folks, this is going to happen every day, weekdays for the foreseeable. And tomorrow we've got the lovely Orla Foley is going to join us. Orla is a physiotherapist with a holistic approach, 19 years in business, and we're going to be on here at 11 a.m. tomorrow to hear Orla's story. And then on Friday, young Aoife Gaffney is going to join us. Aoife has, AKA Prudence Moneypenny, is going to give us some financial tips how we can survive and thrive through all of this. So, Alan, once again, thank you very much, my friend.
You're welcome.
And I'll see you here tomorrow for another coffee with Colin with another guest.
Colin, this is recorded, right?
This is recorded, I hope, Alan. We'll know later.
Yeah. No, it says recording. So just if people join late, they could rewatch or whatever.
Yeah, I'll figure out. I've got to figure out that piece later. We'll do all this. But look, this, by the way, this is a startup. You're watching a startup in action, and you know what? Startups are messy. So happy days. Let's just see where it all leads. Yeah. Okay, folks. Wish everybody well. Talk to you.